Welcome to the fifth video in the Nature of Economics section. This video is titled Types of Economies. In this video we are going to learn about free market economies, mixed economies, command economies, and the high-level differences between them. We will also introduce some key economic thinkers and their assessments of these systems. Finally, we will consider the role of the state in a mixed economy. First, let's just recap what we covered off in the first video. There we introduced the idea of scarcity and defined it as the problem that arises when we have finite resources that allow us to only produce so much, yet we have infinite wants, meaning we want to consume so much. This led to our three basic questions of what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. How do we even begin to answer these questions? A whole spectrum of economic systems has developed over time. The most important factor in how these systems differ is how involved the government is. At one extreme of the spectrum is what can be called a free market economy. In this kind of economy there are no economic decisions taken by the government. All such economic decisions are taken by individuals and firms. This means that the interactions between buyers and sellers in markets would determine what is produced, how it is produced, and for whom it is produced. The key economic thinker here is one that we will return to a number of times. His name is Adam Smith and he is the author of the book, The Wealth of Nations. Smith was a key supporter of the market economy. He considered that individuals would be guided by an invisible hand as they pursued their self-interest. The result would be that resources would be allocated in a way that was desirable for society as a whole. This invisible hand is essentially the price mechanism, which is at the heart of this economics course and will therefore be explained in greater detail later. At the other extreme on our spectrum is what can be called a command economy, also known as a centrally planned economy. This is where all of the economic decisions are taken by the government, which owns the means of production. In practice, this has a number of implications. It means that the government decides what to produce now and what to invest in for production later. The government also decides how much will be produced by each industry, right down to each individual firm. It would also stipulate how the production would take place, including, for example, the techniques to be used. The government would also decide how the output of each industry is to be distributed, using such policies as rationing or by setting incomes and prices. Command economies are closely associated with left-wing politics that include ideologies such as socialism and communism. The relevant economic thinker here is Karl Marx, who considered the free market economic system to be weak. He thought that the unplanned nature of it would result in economic crises. Many people believe that the global financial crisis of 2008 was caused by faults in the free market system. While the idea of central planning directing economic activity is a core feature of a command economy, a communist economy could be said to have additional features. The key idea here would be that the concept of private property would be replaced by common ownership of resources. It is important to note that Adam Smith lived before Karl Marx. Smith's theories are traditionally known as classical economics, which is based on the interactions between producers and consumers. Smith believed that competition between firms would result in efficient production and efficient use of resources. This would in turn lead to fair prices. Marx's theories arose from a critique of Smith's classical theory, as Marx was concerned with how competition would play out. In Marx's view, competition would result in firms going bust, with the remaining firms in the market holding monopoly power over the factors of production. This power would then be used to exploit workers and consumers. The resulting social unrest would lead to the workers, known as the proletariat, seeking to take control of the capital owned by the ruling class, known as the bourgeoisie. Marx considered capitalism, which is essentially the same as free market economics, to be part of a cycle of economic development that economies go through before reaching the final stage of communism. At the moment, most economies are somewhere in the middle. They have traits from both sides and can be described as mixed economies. In general, most economies have been drifting towards the free market economy end of the spectrum for the last few decades. One criticism of state planning is that individuals understand their own personal situations better than the government, even if individuals themselves do not have perfect information. This means that government intervention in resource allocation decisions would not result in the best outcomes. Instead, the market could more efficiently aggregate individual decisions to get to an optimal outcome. This view was promoted by Friedrich Hayek, an Austrian economist. To better understand mixed economies, let's assess free market economies and command economies in more detail. Some of the terminology that gets used in the remainder of this video may not be immediately clear, so it may be worth revisiting this video once you have completed the course. Let's look at the pros and cons of free market economies. The competitive nature of free markets means that as firms seek to maximize profits, resources are used in as efficient a manner as possible. Free markets are therefore productively efficient. Markets tend to react to demand and therefore resources are allocated accordingly, thus tackling the fundamental problem of scarcity directly. The greater freedom available in a market economy means that firms are able to provide choice for consumers, whereas in a command economy production would be directed by those controlling the economy. A free market economy, however, may face issues. As all economic agents are incentivized to maximize their own economic well-being, this self-interest can give rise to inequality. In a pure free market economy, a government would not be able to step in to eradicate this inequality, which may be undesirable for many in the economy. A free market economy may not produce public goods such as street lighting, as people choose to free ride on the kindness of others. Conversely, a free market economy may produce goods that are harmful to society as firms seek to maximize profits. As inequality in the economy increases, firms may become too powerful and be able to engage in market abuse, particularly if they become monopolies. Command economies also have pros and cons. A command economy may be better at avoiding some of the side effects of free markets. Free markets and their pursuit of profits can sometimes lead to market failure where the welfare of society declines. It is argued that a command economy may be better at promoting societal welfare and may achieve a more equitable distribution of resources. By controlling production, a command economy may be able to reduce unemployment by assigning jobs in such a manner as to ensure that as many people are as employed as possible. By controlling production, a command economy can seek to produce sufficient goods to meet all basic needs such as housing, food and so on. This may not happen in a free market economy, where it may be unprofitable to sell to all in the market. A command economy may also need to use price controls to allow it to deliver to all potential buyers. The lack of free markets in a command economy means that certain behaviors like market abuse by monopolies are avoided. Command economies face challenges too. Due to the centralized nature of command economies, information has to be gathered by key decision makers who may not be able to observe all aspects of the economy firsthand. If poor information is collected, then the economy may not be productively efficient and may produce too much or too little. In the pursuit of meeting everybody's basic needs, inefficient production may be protected to ensure that quotas are met. These resources may be better used elsewhere. Command economies often use price controls, but these can result in shortages or surpluses of some goods, meaning that command economies may not always be allocatively efficient. The centralized power in command economies may limit the rights of individuals to pursue their own economic objectives. For example, if they are selected for certain jobs they do not want to do. Consumers may also find that they have insufficient choice as to what to buy. Now that we better understand the pros and cons of the two extremes in this spectrum, let's consider what the role of the state or the government may be in a mixed economy. The role may involve any combination of the options that follow. The government may wish to focus on its macroeconomic goals rather than intervene in specific markets. This means that it would focus its efforts on creating the right macroeconomic environment that would allow progress against these goals. Examples of macroeconomic goals could include focusing on overall growth of the economy, or the level of inflation, or unemployment in the economy. If a government determines that markets have failed, then it may choose to intervene in markets using a number of tools it has at its disposal. It may use the tools of taxes, subsidies or price controls to intervene on the prices of goods and services. One example in the UK might be changing the value-added tax percentage. Alternatively, it could use taxes, subsidies or price of labor interventions if it is looking to affect incomes in order to affect spending or saving patterns in an economy. One example in the UK might be changing the thresholds at which different levels of income tax are paid. Many economies still retain a role for the state in the direct provision of certain goods and services. While defense is an example that is cited often, others include education and health in the UK. Direct provision may be undertaken by the state for economic reasons, such as removing the profit incentive, or for political reasons, such as national security threats from other economies. One further role for the state may be to regulate markets to prevent market abuse and protect consumers. Regulation may impose a cost on suppliers who may then pass that on to consumers. Let's recap. In this video, we learned that the extent of the involvement of the government is a key determinant of whether an economy is a command economy, a mixed economy or a free market economy. We learned about Adam Smith's invisible hand guiding the market to efficient production and allocation of resources in a free market economy. We also learned that Hayek considered that the market would be better than the state at aggregating individual wants. A different perspective was provided by Marx in his critique of capitalism, and his fears regarding the concentration of power in owners of capital and the ensuing inequality. We learned about the pros and cons of the two extremes and that most economies would generally be considered mixed economies, recognizing that there is a wide spectrum between the two extremes. This means that even if the economy is considered a mixed economy, the role of the state may vary greatly, from macroeconomic goals to regulation of markets.